Hi, you're listening to the She Speaks, We Hear podcast. This is a platform for British Muslim women to talk about the issues that matter to them. Muslim women have been identified as a hard-to-reach section of society. Our aim on this podcast is to get our voices heard. Hi, and welcome to episode 7 of the She Speaks, We Hear podcast. I hope you're all doing really well. Today's guest is writer and podcaster Tasneem Abdur-Rashid. She's a London girl, but she's lived in the UAE through her work across media, PR and communications. She's just written her debut novel, which she'll tell you all about, and has been co-hosting a podcast since the pandemic began in 2020. She's recently completed a master's in creative writing with distinction, by the way. So let's get straight into it. Assalamu alaikum, Tasneem, and welcome to the podcast.
Walaikum salam. Thanks so much for having me today.
Thanks for coming on. For those people who don't know you, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. So I'm 39 years old. I don't know, do I even want to say that?
You don't look it, by the way. I thought you were about like 29.
Oh my gosh, well thank you so much, because I'm not looking my best. This is my school run look, except I do wear my prescription sunglasses so no one sees the dark shadows under my eyes. But yes, I'm 39, I've got 2 boys, and I've got a book coming out this July, inshallah. It's my debut rom-com, so I'm just gearing up towards that at the moment. I'm also a podcaster. I've recently done a master's in creative writing. Wifey, you know what we're like. We've got so many hijabs on our heads, so many roles that we have to fill. So yeah, doing a little bit of everything really.
That sounds really interesting. So let's go back to author. That is very exciting. That was one of the reasons I really wanted to get you on, because you don't often come across Muslim writers, British Muslim writers, writing a romance novel. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
How did that come about?
Okay, so I mean, I've been writing since forever. My dad bought me a computer when I was 10 years old. This is back in the days when no one even had computers in their houses. And he was like, this is for you to write your books on, because, you know, everyone who knew me knew I was obsessed with reading. I loved to write. I was constantly creating stories. So I've been doing that as far as I can remember. I actually had another book published while I was living in Dubai, but I did that anonymously. That was under a pseudonym. So no one ever actually knew that it was my book. And it was a best-selling book as well, but no one knew it was me. So this time round, I thought, you know what, I have to do this the traditional way. I want people to know that this book is mine. I want to have the full experience. I want to have a launch, you know, I want to go on tours. I can see you're aching to ask something.
I'm aching to ask. So you're not going to reveal to us what that book was?
I'm not. No.
Oh, that's a shame.
There's a reason why no one knows it's me. So it's going to stay like that, inshallah.
Fine.
As long as possible. But yeah, so this time round, so this book is about a 29-year-old girl. She is Bengali like me, British, Londoner. And her mum basically tells her that if she can't find a husband by the time she reaches 30, she's sending her off to Bangladesh to get a husband from there. So she has a year to find a husband. So it's just after her birthday. She realizes she's got a whole year and she just needs to find someone ASAP. So she starts doing everything she can, you know, to find this man. She joins apps, she goes on events, she does the whole traditional Bengali biodata thing. She throws herself at people at weddings. So she's doing everything she can. But along the way, she kind of like finds herself as well. So that's the premise of the book. And I think it's been in the writing ever since I came of a marriageable age and all my friends started looking to get married. And it's kind of like a mix of all the different experiences like we go through as women, trying to find a husband and trying to settle down. So that's how the idea was born. So I started writing it a few years ago after I had my second child. You know what it's like, you're a mum, you know, those first few months are you're just in a daze, right? So I was in this daze of just breastfeeding and trying to get by, not killing off my 2 children. I had a 2-year-old as well who was super hyper. And I was just getting through the days thinking, is this it? Like, I'm dying here. Like, I just need to stimulate my mind somehow. Like, this is great. Motherhood is great. And I'm exhausted and I don't sleep and I don't talk to adults most of the time. And I'm just, you know, in this swamp of just housework and child rearing. And I needed to pull out of it. So then I thought, you know what? I've always wanted to write this book. I'm just going to do it. And I took out my laptop in the middle of the night. Baby was glued to me. I was kind of like reaching over his body and writing out the words. And that really got me through the first, you know, year and a half of having 2 kids. yeah, every free second I'll just start writing, and it gave me so much joy and so much pleasure to bring this whole experience, not just my experience, but an experience that so many other like Muslim women in the UK face when finding somebody, and just bringing it to life. So that's how it happened. Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack there. Going back to
Yeah.
writing the book. So would you say you've drawn upon your own experiences as well as all your friends and just everything you've seen? It's like is there part of a biographical element to it?
Yeah, little bits. I mean, not her story in itself. I mean, my husband, I met him when I was living in Dubai. We got married when I was 27, so I never really had that proper pressure that Zara, the character in my book, has. So her story is more like it is definitely drawing on a lot of relatives and friends who have, starting to approach 30, and the pressure really mounts at that point where you have your parents telling you that, as soon as you hit 30, the proposals stop coming, and whereas previously you had 10, now you'd have one, and you might end up settling for somebody below average or below what you wanted because, the clock's ticking, time's running out. And everywhere you go, you have people asking you, why aren't you married? What's wrong? Why aren't you settling down? People making judgments on you. So there's all of that kind of stuff happening, and it's a lot of pressure for people. So I think that element of it is definitely from, my friends and extended family. But there are other bits that are drawn from my life, like Zara, for example. She's from North London, Finsbury Park, same as me. She's got like the nanny, the grandma's based on my nanny. The mom's, I tell my mum that it's not, but it really is very similar to my mum.
We won't tell her.
She's like, why have you done this? Why have you done this? Why are you making the mum so mean? Everyone's going to think it's me. And I'm like, Mum, it's not you. It's fiction. It's nothing to do with you. And she's like, yeah, but she eats like, Tyrrell's mature cheddar crisps like I do. And she watches Pakistani dramas like I do. It's very obviously me. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's fiction. It's fiction. But yeah.
That's
similar to my mum.
Well, that's I guess that's one of the problems when you're writing novels, because I guess a lot of authors do draw upon people that they know and base their characters on people that they know, and that's probably maybe one of the reasons why you wrote under a pseudonym before. But it's difficult, especially I guess in Asian culture whereby people can get offended quite quickly, can't they? Because everything's supposed to be private and not out in the open.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. And also, I think being a Muslim woman, being a hijabi Muslim woman, I was really aware of that as well. And I just thought to myself, I want to tell my story authentically, but at the same time, I don't want to go around trampling on people. So I had to really, it was a delicate balance, kind of getting the story out there, making it authentic, making the character story real, being true to myself, but at the same time, being true to my culture and being respectful towards my culture as well. So yeah, it was a hard balance to strike, but I think I've got it. I hope I've got it. We'll find out when the book comes out and everyone's like, we hate her, she portrayed us in a negative light. I'll be like, okay, well, it wasn't a balance at all.
Who is it aimed at, the book? Is it aimed at other British Muslims or British females?
I'd say it's definitely more for women than for men. Obviously, there are men who like their rom-coms, but I would say primarily it would be for women. And I'm hoping it transcends culture. So I wouldn't say it's just for British Muslims. I think any woman would be able to relate to the story of trying to find a partner. It might not be an arranged marriage. It might not be, the deadline might not be the same. But I think there's an expectation across the globe, across all cultures, of women settling down by a certain point and having a family and having children. So yeah, I hope it would speak to everybody.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because it is a global issue for women, right? Because whether in certain cultures they don't talk about it like we do, in Asian culture it's like the utmost importance when you get married and who you're going to marry, and all that dictates kind of your 20s, for a lot of families, not everybody, obviously generalizing here quite a lot, but for the majority, marriage is kind of top priority for parents, especially. Maybe not for the kids who are of marriageable age, but definitely for parents. But in all other cultures, women generally do want to settle down, do want to get married, do want to have children. But it's funny how it's not really, and if you speak about it in other cultures, it's like, oh, men run away and, all that kind of. So it's interesting you say that, because of course, most women do want to find somebody, not just women, men as well, but they just don't want to say it because they seem desperate or something. I don't know what it is, but in our culture it's very open.
It's very open, and I think it makes it a lot easier when the expectations are kind of laid out, right? You meet people knowing that you're here to talk about marriage. You're not here to talk about dating or having a good time, and then 10 years later you find out that that person doesn't even want to settle down ever.
Yeah, there's all those mind games and
Yeah.
whatnot are kind of should be eradicated. They're not all the time, but in theory there should be less of all that.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, the book touches kind of like on all of that. And it's a really true, like I would say, London experience as well. Because I think wherever you are in the world, it's very unique. And your experience in finding someone is dictated by where you are as well geographically. So you might be Muslim, but you might be from a different city or a different country, and your experience will be different. So Zara's one is very unique to London. And, it's very unique to Bengalis as well. But at the same time, it's something I think everyone can relate to.
So you've done a master's in creative writing. Did you start writing the book before you started your master's?
Yeah, so I started writing the book before, and then I came across. So I've been wanting to do this creative writing MA for years, and I just got busy with other stuff. Like my BA is also in creative writing, so I've always enjoyed it. But then I started working. I worked in media, I worked in comms, I worked in PR. I travelled, I lived abroad. So I did all these amazing things, and it kind of just went on the back burner. And then I started thinking, what? Do I even want to spend 10 grand on a master's when I'm all right? I've done pretty okay without one. So what's the point? But then I came across, so I'm on this online platform called Muslim Mamas. I don't know if you know.
Yes, I was going to ask you about Muslim Mamas.
Oh, is it? Okay, so I joined Muslim Mamas when I became a mum as on the Facebook group, because back then it was just a community Facebook group. So I joined that, and it really got me through all the trials and tribulations of motherhood, just having all these other Muslim mothers out there ready to help you, ready to give you advice, talk about experiences and so on. So anyway, I was on the group and somebody posted a link to a scholarship by the Aziz Foundation.
Yep.
And so it was like 2 or 3 years, it was 3 years ago now. So I saw that, and at that point I wasn't working. I'd had my second baby. I was on maternity leave, I think, still, or it was coming to an end, and I was wondering whether I wanted to go back to work or not, all of that. So I saw that, and I thought, you know what, if I got this scholarship, then that would be funded. I wouldn't have to worry about the money element of it. And I thought, I'm not working right now, so I could do it, and I could do it part-time, and I could do it with my kids, and, it would be great. So I applied for the scholarship, and then alhamdulillah, I got the scholarship. So once I got it, I was like, okay, that's it. This is it. I have to do it. Like, how many times in my life are people going to offer this to me on a platter? So then I thought I have to go for it. So I looked at courses. I wanted to go to Birkbeck in London, because they offer a lot of it's all evening based basically. So it's suited for people who are only free in the evenings if they're working full time, got kids or whatever. So it's perfect for me. So yeah, so I got that enrolled. I got a place at Birkbeck to do it. Decided to do it part time so it wouldn't interfere with my home life too much. But then I got headhunted at the same time for a job. And then it was such a great opportunity because, I was working for Bernardo's in their media team, and their head office is down the road. And I live in Essex, so you don't often get head offices down the road,
Right.
You usually have to get on a train and go into central London for that. So I thought, oh my God, it's just here. I have to do this. This is a sign. So I was getting all these signs, which I thought were signs, but who knows if they were or not. And so then I took the job as well. So suddenly I went from, being at home, chilling as much as you can chill with 2 small children and a husband, to suddenly doing a master's and working full time and trying to finish this book off all at the same time. That was mad.
Wow. And now you've completed your master's.
Now, alhamdulillah, yeah, so I got a distinction, whoop, whoop.
Well done.
So it was all worth it, alhamdulillah, honestly, it was amazing. And yeah, so I'd already written most of the book. I think I'd written all the book by the time I started the master's, but it really helped me with the editing process. So what I'd done was when I started writing the book, I would post chapters online. I'd do that, and then I'd share the link with my friends and family. So I'd be on a blog, and I'd share the link to people on Muslim Mamas and other online groups I was on, and they'd read the chapters basically. And, they really loved it, really enjoyed it. And it kind of really helped to kind of motivate me to continue writing it. But as I was doing it online, I didn't have a proper plan. I'd just write whenever I felt like it. I didn't have a structure in mind. So by the time I finished, I had this gigantic book. Yeah, it was like 160,000 words. And it shouldn't be that. That genre should probably be between around 80 is the norm, right?
Okay.
So it was twice the size of what it should be. But I didn't really know that. I just thought, yeah, this is great. I've written this big, huge book. Why not, right?
Because you think about pages, don't you, rather than how long is a book?
Yeah, you don't know. Yeah. You don't know how many thousand words a book is. But when I started my course, quickly realised that was way too big. And then the feedback that I got from my tutors and the workshopping really helped me in like condensing that and shortening it and editing it. So, which I needed to do. So while I was on the course, right at the beginning, actually, I started pitching to agents. So, when you get a book, the traditional route is to pitch a book to agents. Like, you probably know all this anyway.
I don't. I was going to ask you, how easy is it to get your book published? Because for lots of people listening who might want to write a book, it'd be quite useful, I think, for people to know how do you actually get a book published?
Okay, so if you're going the traditional route, so you're not self-publishing, so I'll just talk about the traditional way. So you've done your book, you should finish your book before you start pitching to anyone, in case they ask to see the whole thing and then it's not there, then that doesn't look good. So have your book ready, and then usually most agencies, so you make a list. I made a list of all the literary agents I thought would be interested in my book. There's a book called the Writer's Handbook or the Writer's Yearbook, but you don't even need that anymore. You can just Google it. So I made a list of all the different agents I was interested in, and they asked for different things. So some of them asked for the first 3 chapters, some might ask for the first 50,000 words. So they asked for the beginning of the book anyway, and then they asked for a synopsis. So nearly everyone asked for a synopsis. So that's probably the hardest thing to write, even harder than the book itself. Like, you have to condense your whole book into 1 or 2 pages. And you kind of write it. The done thing is to write it the style of the book, so they get a flavour of your style as well.
Right, so it's more than just the blurb at the back. It's not that. It's actually
not the blurb. It's everything. You're not like, read this to find out what happens. No, you tell them what happens. So if someone dies, you tell them someone dies. If there's the big moment, the climax, you tell them that in the synopsis. So it's the highlights of the book, basically. So you do that, and you write a cover letter as well. So I did that, I got all my bits together, and I started sending it out to different agents. Now, most of the agents got back to me saying it's way too long, and so sorry, we're not going to take it. Right? They don't even tell you how to cut it down. They don't even say, come back to me when that's like done. Like, they don't have time for that. But one agency that I sent it to, my agency, so they're called the Good Literary Agency. Amazing. So they kind of specialize in underrepresented authors. So people from ethnic minorities, the people from the LGBTQ plus community, that kind of thing. So I sent it out to them. And one of the readers, she was a reader at the agency at the time, she read the book and she loved it. And then she came back to me and she said, you know what, I love it, but it's too long. I can't show this to the agents. They're just going to come back and say it's too long. So she said, please just cut it down, like get it to 100,000 words if you can. And then I'll read it again, and then I'll send it. If it's still great as it is, I'll send it to an agent, one of the agents, to read it. That was amazing, the fact that happened. So now I think it was like September, October. So I literally just started my course in September, and now it was October, and this big thing had happened. And I was like, oh my God. And she wanted it by December. I think end of December or January she wanted it. So I had like 2 months to do this. And it was one of the hardest, in terms of my book, it was the hardest stage. Like getting it from 160 to 100,000. I think I got it to 98 or something. It was so difficult. Like, I thought everything was important, right? But she did help. She said, look, I know you love all of it and all of it is great. But as a book, when I was reading it as a reader, I just wanted to get to the main story. There were too many subplots. She said, there's too many subplots. I just wanted to know what's happening next, what's happening with her, with the main character. There's just too many characters. So think about that. You need to cut down your subplots, cut down your characters. So that's what I did. I went back and I literally just cut off characters, because I had this character who's meeting all these guys, right, to get married. So I had to cut them down. So say she met 10 before, I cut it down to say 4.
Right.
And I found that really hard, because I really wanted to show the experience of what we go through when we're trying to find someone. And we don't meet just 4 people often. Sometimes you meet like 50 people, and I wanted to show the whole range of that, but I couldn't. And I found that really hard to come to terms with, knowing that I just can't do everything in one book. Maybe that would be another book for another day. But for this book, I had to cut it down.
I can relate to that. In journalism, editing is obviously such a big part of it. My lecturer told me, don't be too precious with your words, because we write something and we are precious about it because they're our words. And I've got another lecturer who says, kill your babies, Because you've got to kill
exactly.
your babies.
So that's exactly what it is. So there's, I mean, they also call it like kill your darlings as well. So yeah, so you just kill off your darlings. You're killing off all these people. You're killing off all these characters, you know. And there were some characters that were great, and I loved them, and some scenes that I absolutely loved. And I just had to be ruthless with that edit. I couldn't do a line by line edit. I would never get rid of 60,000 words doing it line by line. I had to get rid of chapters. I had to get rid of plots and characters, and that was huge. Yeah, that was really, really hard, but I did it. I did it by the deadline, and then I gave it back to her, and she was like, "This is great. You know, you've done such an amazing job." And then she sent it to the agent.
Okay, so this is coming out in July.
This is coming out July. So the tentative publication date is 7th of July of this year. It's called Finding Mr. Perfectly Fine. And yeah, so
it sounds really fun. I can't wait to read it. Going back to Aziz Foundation, for anybody who doesn't know, they offer is it just masters they offer?
It's just masters,
scholarships for British Muslims who may not have the funds to do it, and support them throughout that journey, I think. So they're a really great organisation. I mean, they've also joined on to the Journalism Diversity Fund now. So they're a sponsor of that, which is also...
they're offering quite a few internships. I think they had like an Evening Standard one, and another, like they do some really great journalism internships as well for their scholars. And I think the main thing with the Aziz Foundation is you have to demonstrate how your master's is going to benefit the British Muslim community afterwards.
Right.
So you wouldn't be able to just do, like, say, pottery and be like, yeah, you know, you have to kind of demonstrate how your pottery is going to benefit.
Fair enough. No, that sounds about right.
But they're amazing. They've been so good.
You mentioned podcasting. So you've got a podcast called Not Another Mum Pod, which you co-host with Nafisa.
That's right.
So when did that start?
So Nafisa is actually one of the founders of Muslim Mamas, the Facebook group, right? And I'm just like a member of that group. And we became friends over that. And then I think it was first lockdown. So that was nearly 2 years ago now, right? Yeah. First lockdown, she messaged me, and I'm like in the throes of working from home, homeschooling my kids, doing my master's, finishing my book, right? And she messages me, and she's like, "Tas, you know, I know you're super, super busy and all of that, but I just really want to start a podcast because I really want to launch a podcast. Like, I'm really passionate about it. I want to give, you know, women a platform and a voice to share their experiences, get their stories out there, similar to what you're doing." And she said, "You know, how would you feel about joining me on this?" And I replied, I was like, "Are you crazy?" I'm like, "I'm flipping busy, mate. I've got no time for this." I was like, "I've got no time. Like, I don't have time to breathe, you know. I really don't have time." And then she was like, "Okay, think about it. I mean, I'll do all the production and I'll do the editing. You just have to co-host it with me and all of that." And I was like, "Oh, okay, actually, well, maybe I do have time for this." And that's how the idea started. So it started as like a lockdown project. So I think she and Nafisa at that point had already done a couple of like little podcasts for the Museum of London, who were like recording people's Ramadan experiences in lockdown. And she'd done some recording for them and she'd really enjoyed it. So I think that's kind of where this idea came from her side. But then when she told me that, you know, I could come on board and I can just do what I love, which is talking, I love that, you know, then, and obviously getting people heard and getting interesting stories. Because like you're a journalist, I'm a writer. We love getting stories out there, right?
Of course.
And that's just another way. It's just another medium. It's another storytelling platform. And it just made sense to me. And I thought, you know what, let's just do this. And that's how it started. So it took us ages, though. From that moment of deciding to do it, we couldn't think of a name. Like, I don't know how it was for you guys, but it took us so long to think of a name, weeks and weeks and weeks, literally. Every day we were voice noting each other with names and names and names and names, and like half the names you like, they're already taken.
Yes, that's true as well.
Yeah, right. All the domains are taken, and some of them were like too cool. Like, we had this other idea, like pod and kettle. We thought, well, wow, that's so cool.
Like cup of tea.
No one got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like the pot calling the kettle black and all of that, but it's a pod, right? So no one got it. Like only me and her got it.
Well, for us, it was we were already She Speaks, We Hear. So the podcast
from the blog, right?
from the blog and the website. So it was naturally going to be called that. But yes, when you search She Speaks, loads of podcasts come up. But we'd already had that name from about 5 years ago.
You probably already had that dilemma, what to call it, when you started the blog.
Yeah, I think our founder, Akila Ahmed, probably had that dilemma, as you said, back then.
So yeah, it took us ages. And then we were like designing logos. And we got a proper graphic designer to do it all. We just wanted it to look really clean, really professional. So we got all of that designed. And then we obviously brainstormed who we wanted to interview. And her, as one of the founders founders of Muslim Mamas already had a huge network of people and people that we could, speak to and interview. So yeah, it started off like that. So the first couple we just did with me and her, we thought let people get to know who we are. And then we just went in there and started like interviewing people. And we've had some really, really interesting topics and really interesting people on there as well. So I don't know if you've heard any of them, but like one of the earlier ones we did was somebody, it's called, Was My Husband Gay?
Yes.
So
I've listened to that one.
That one basically took us to like number 13 on Apple Podcasts. Because it had so many downloads. It's such an interesting one. We've had another really interesting one called Losing Faith, and it's about our guest Selena. She left Islam, but she came back, and that was really good and real powerful story of what can push people away from our faith, but also what brought her back to it too. We've had like a mental health one recently. We did another one like spiritual abuse that was really hard hitting. We've done one with a child bride who's like a TED talk, TED speaker, sorry. Yeah, we've done quite a few. We interviewed somebody from Gaza. So when everything was happening in Palestine last year, we had like live from the Gaza Strip kind of thing, like a real account from a mother there, how life is like there. Halal dating in the pandemic. We've done
so
loads.
Quite hard-hitting issues that generally don't get spoken about. And I've listened to a few, and they are really great, really entertaining.
Thank you.
Especially the most recent one, I think, about being a second wife.
Did you hear second wife?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
It was really, really like gripping, I must say. So for anybody who wants to check out Not Another Mum Pod, do check it out, because it's got some real, like, you don't really hear these stories because people don't want to share such personal stuff, but somehow you guys manage to find guests, and I guess that's through Muslim Mamas. And for people who don't know about Muslim Mamas, I've known about Muslim Mamas because I guess I am a Muslim mother, and I think most Muslim mothers in this country probably who are on Facebook probably have heard of it.
Yeah, I think if you're on Facebook, you've probably heard of it.
So it's just like it's like Mumsnet, but it's just a Facebook group. But you've got a website as well. Well, not you, but
so they've recently launched a website as well. So the original founder Nargis, so she started it off as as the community group, and then I think a few years later, Nafisa came on board and they've turned it into a whole business. So there's a website as well. And now, actually, our podcast, Not Another Mum Pod, now falls under the Muslim Mamas umbrella too.
Right.
Which is great for us because it gives us that reach and it gives them a podcast. So it's been like win-win all around, alhamdulillah. But it's been amazing. It's been such an amazing journey.
Muslim Mamas Facebook group, people post their problems, issues in terms, and it actually doesn't have to be to do with parenting. It's generally to do with
everything.
It's everything, relationships, parents,
relationships, in-laws, health, sex,
everything you can think of is on that page. And a lot of people do comment. You get hundreds of comments, and it sometimes gets quite feisty as well.
Yeah. Our podcast, the one with the second wife, that got a lot of comments.
Well, I was going to ask you, so you're addressing certain issues that people don't like to talk about, say this, the spiritual abuse, the sexual abuse. People don't want to hear about that. Yeah. Have you had a backlash from...
So from the spiritual abuse one, and we didn't, I think people just really felt like this was a story that needed to be heard.
Yeah.
And as parents as well, it's something that we need to be aware of when it comes to our own children as well. So I think that one didn't get any backlash, but the polygamy one got a lot of backlash. So it was not a lot, but I'd say maybe 10-20% of it was... So people were like, why are you giving this woman, this homewrecker, a platform to spread her fitna and to spread her story and, all of this? And I think what people need to realize is that we as podcasters, we're presenters, we're not the jury. We're not here to judge people. We're not here to, but people aren't on trial. When they come on our podcast, they're sharing their stories. They're not on trial, and we're not going to treat our guests like that either,
But you really questioned her a lot. I mean, that's what I really like about both of you, is that you get those questions and those awkward questions that everybody's thinking. And you're thinking, when I've listened to some of your episodes, like, are they going to ask her this though? And then you do. And they're very blatant questions. And actually...
so we try and do that. We try and ask the questions that we want to know the answers to, and that we know our listeners...
You don't hold back, basically.
Yeah, so we try and be authentic, and we try and be respectful and polite. But despite that, some people felt like she shouldn't have had a platform to even speak at all because of how their relationship came about. But That's not our place. It's not our place to judge people. We're here to tell a story. And this is how a lot of the second marriages do come about. Because her relationship started off as he was married and they were dating while he was married, and she knew that he was married, I think some people just couldn't get over that. They couldn't get over the way their relationship started. So despite the fact that they did things right in the end, they just couldn't get over that initial part of it, that she'd gone into another woman's marriage and was dating her husband. But, for me, I don't know, it's her story. And to be honest, she wasn't the one who was married, it was the husband. So if anyone should be blamed, it's the husband. He was the one that was married at the end of the day, not her.
The Not Another Mum Pod, as it's called, is that it's aimed at Muslim women generally, is it? Or who is the audience?
I think originally we started it as Muslim women, to be aimed at Muslim women, and so the voices would be for women. So the story would be, by women for women, basically. But I think we are open to broadening it. We are open to broadening it to people from other faiths. Our mental health one, for example, that wasn't the person we interviewed wasn't Muslim. She was Sikh, and she had a really, really strong, powerful story as well. And she went through PND, postnatal depression, and she was suicidal, and she had to deal with grief. So there was a lot in there. We just felt like her story was so interesting, and it was so important to get that out there, and to get that message out there, and to get the message of hope, and also like the coping mechanisms of how to cope with things like mental health. So so she wasn't Muslim. So we are open to interviewing people. We are still trying to keep it women-led and women-based. But, we've had a lot of people ask us if we'd ever have a man on there talking about his relationship in a polygamous marriage. So
I think that would be fascinating.
I think it would be fascinating. So we're like, should we just do it? But we said it's for women. But like, why would we want a man on our platform? But then we could grill him, we could really, really grill him. So, we're thinking about all of that as well. So, we're open, we're flexible, we're open to progressing, we're open to changing our model if we need to, What about you? What about for you guys?
So She Speaks, We Hear, it is platforming.
So She Speaks, obviously.
Yeah, it is platforming women, 100%, because we focus on sexism, racism and Islamophobia. And, gendered Islamophobia is actually more prevalent in British society because obviously we Muslim women, those who wear hijab and jilbab and niqab, they are more obviously Muslim. So that's, I think they bear the brunt of a lot of Islamophobia. So our focus is women, but we need allies, male allies and male, it's not the whole point about defeating misogyny and getting through it is by men understanding. And so men are very welcome to join us and collaborate with us for different things. But I guess our stories and our ethos is about giving women the voice because they're often not heard. But I think this podcast is for everybody, because I think about getting voices heard, it needs to be for the wider community, which is why I sort of wanted to explain a little about Aziz Foundation, a little bit about Muslim mamas, because a lot of people don't know about it, and why would they, right? What advice have you got for people who want to write a book? I know you said about getting the book. Well, what would you say to them?
I think if you've got a story to tell, I think 100% you need to get out there and you need to tell your story with whatever medium that's relevant to you, what's interesting to you. So if it's to write a book, I think firstly you need to read. You need to read loads. If you want to write, you have to read. Like you can't just be a writer and not read anything. So just read, and that will really help kind of like hone your craft and learn your craft. I think if you've never studied anything to do with writing, it would really help to do some kind of creative writing course, because there is technique to it. There's a formula to some stuff. There's things that you kind of need to know. It's not just getting a story out there in terms of narrative and dialogue and characters. There's elements of a story that have to be there, an arc, that kind of thing. So that would really help. And I think maybe joining some kind of writing workshop or a writer's circle where you write and share your work and get it workshopped by your peers, I think that's invaluable. Having people read and then critique your work is really, really important, I think, and it's really helpful. But I think, if you've never done it, just get started first. Just start writing and carve like some time aside every day, if it's just 20 minutes, half an hour a day, just to get it out there, get it on paper, and then you can always go back and you can work on your structure and you can work on everything else. But just get started. You have to. Otherwise it won't ever happen, right?
Yeah, and I think nowadays we're very lucky that there are so many opportunities, and since maybe it's since the death of George Floyd and other things that have happened in the last a few years, but there does seem to be a lot more opportunities for people of ethnic minorities, of different kind of backgrounds. So that, the time is now.
Yeah. The time is now. It really 100%. I mean, what I've done now is like I'm making a conscious effort to read books only by people of color, because I just feel like I've spent my whole life reading and studying books by white people for white people. My whole life has been spent like this, So now is the time basically to support, writers of color. And that's what I do. I just read books by people of color and I write reviews on them. And I just draw inspiration from it and support them, really. And so, now is the time. There's never been a better time. It could be better. There's still not as much diversity as there needs to be in publishing at all. But, I think we're slowly getting there. It's better now than before anyway.
Agreed. Where can people find you if they want to find out about you or buy your book later on in the year?
So I'm most active on Instagram, I think, more than anything else. So it's Tasneem A-Rashid. You'll probably tag me anyway.
I will. I'll put it in the show notes.
I hope you tag me.
I will.
So I keep everyone updated there, and I do I share my writing journey, basically, like the journey to publication, and I share book reviews and stuff like that. And everything about my book will be on there, inshallah. I just can't wait for you guys to read it.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much for coming on, Tasneem. It's really nice talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
That was the lovely Tasneem Abdur-Rashid. I hope you enjoyed listening to our conversation. I've put Tasneem's social media handles in the footnotes so you can keep up with her work. We've had a busy start to the year at She Speaks We Hear headquarters with workshops and supper clubs. You can find out more about us by visiting us on our socials or going to the website shespeakswehear.com and signing up to the mailing list. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, please rate and review as it'll help others find our podcast. Do follow so your podcast app will update you with the latest episode. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Clubhouse and Facebook. Just search for She Speaks We Hear. See you next time.